Hi, Lee Davis here. Hopefully my arm is long enough. I want to tell you the stories, or at least the story I know, of what's going on at Wheeling Pitt Follansbee. Wheeling Pitt Follansbee was the old coke plant for Wheeling Pittsburgh Steel in the Steubenville complex. And those coke batteries were built by coppers out of Pittsburgh. And even in the days leading up to the end in, I think it was called Mountain State Carbon, when they were making coke there, there was asbestos containing materials all throughout that plant, and also in the old byproducts plant, later taken over by coppers, that took the chemicals off the coking process, and that way they could make railroad ties with the creosote. Lots of lovely stuff was used in and around those coke batteries and came off those coke batteries. And if you ever drove by on Route 2, you knew that when those coke batteries were running. And when I started, I was taught by some of the workers there on the coking process and what goes on, and the fact that people were wearing wooden shoes, coats made of asbestos, aprons made of asbestos, gloves made of asbestos, running on the tops of these coke batteries as oven patchers to patch the ovens and make sure they were running while they were running. It's amazing. Wooden shoes like clogs so that their feet didn't burn. It's an incredible way to work. There was other uses of wooden shoes in steel mills that I've learned over the years during hot repairs on many different kinds of furnaces. But I know the oven patchers used to use asbestos containing cements and throw it in buckets, mix it with their hands, and patch and do exactly what it says. Patch the ovens. And these ovens were still hot. Sometimes they'd run inside, sometimes it'd be on the roof. It's an incredible thing. And it certainly doesn't go on today. Things are mechanized in 2023 when I'm making this. But it was a very different process back in the day. So it also involved a huge amount of building and rebuilding these coke batteries, which involved using asbestos containing materials that were put in, they came in, some of the cements were in dry bags, you can imagine, that, when you dump it out, the dust goes everywhere, and no one had a mask. And it was mixed up by hand with a trowel. Everybody in the area breathed it. And when that happened, years later, we found out the consequences when everybody got sick. These cases are for real, because people around, people using the stuff were also using asbestos-containing pipe covering and gaskets, using the asbestos-containing cement. There was, people, other trades, pipe fitters, millwrights, using asbestos-containing gaskets, pipe coverings, packings on equipment all around there. And then as the chemicals and the fumes came off the coke batteries, they were pumped next door to the byproducts plant, which, like I said, had creosote and benzene, which causes its own host of problems. So, it's been quite an education on the way things used to be. One thing, these cases are real. I've sat in enough living rooms over the years, and sick people, made people sick. And I know people make fun of them, and, people make fun of lawyers. I've seen what happens, so it's real. So in the end, that plant had a lot of stuff going on, and the companies that at least supplied the plant, and to some extent coppers, had a a duty to know what they had going on there as far as exposing people, tradesmen, and others to really bad stuff. And they knew about it and didn't do anything. So, years later, the consequences were people got sick. And that's why these lawsuits continue to this day, because it takes 20 or 30 years for these diseases to develop in people who were exposed as, young men, even young women who washed their husbands' clothes, or their family's clothes. That's what happened. I've had cases like that. So these cases are real. And the Wheeling Pitt Follansbee plant had some real, there was a lot of asbestos in that place back in its day. I don't know how much is there in 2023, but back in its day, that place had a lot of asbestos.